It took 25 years to unravel this terrible story. An American university student left a party and disappeared without a trace. From the first days, the police had a suspect, but they could not prove his guilt. It wasn't until decades later that the podcast's author unearthed the grisly details of the case, brought it to the attention of millions of people, and forced the police to reopen the investigation. Kristin Smart was born on February 20, 1977 in the German city of Augsburg, but in early childhood she moved with her parents, brother and sister to the United States. The family settled in Stockton, California. Her parents worked as teachers for children of American military personnel. After graduating from high school in 1996, Kristin entered Cal Poly. When not studying, she worked as a lifeguard at the on-campus recreation center. On May 25 of this year, a large party was planned at the fraternity house to celebrate the birthday of one of the students. Kristin planned to go there, but her friends decided against it. Then the girl went to the fraternity house. The party took place in a typical style for American students. A large group drank alcohol, listened to music and had fun. That evening, Kristin drank too much, felt sick, and went to her dorm around 2 in the morning. But she almost couldn't walk on her own anymore. After spotting her on the street, 2 other students, Cheryl Anderson and Tim DeWeese, decided to walk her home. They were both present at that party. After some time, they were joined by another student who was also at the party, Paul Flores. He offered to walk Kristin to the dorm since he lived closest to it than Daryl and Tim, who had to go in a different direction. Having said goodbye to them, they left. Since then, no one has seen Kristin alive. At first, her disappearance was not given much importance, but her roommate, Margarita Campos, was the first to worry. She was sure that her friend would return home after the party, but this never happened. Adding to the anxiety was the fact that all of Kristin's belongings, including her passport, wallet and bank card, were left in the room. This meant that she couldn't just pick up and go somewhere. Margarita contacted the campus police only 2 days after the girl disappeared. Apparently, she hoped to the last that everything was okay with Kristin and she would return home. However, campus police did not take the neighbors' statements seriously. It was the weekend, after which, moreover, the US National Day of Remembrance, dedicated to fallen American servicemen, was celebrated. Local police simply decided that Kristin had gone home, and they were not embarrassed by the fact that she left all her important things and documents at the hostel. Of special note is the fact that it was a 7-hour drive from the university campus to Kristin's home. It's too far a distance to suddenly go on such a journey without money or documents, especially in the middle of the night. A few days later, local police decided to work and called the girl's parents. Kristin's mother said that her daughter had not come home for a long time and had not called her in recent days. This call made my mother worry, and my parents went to the police. But even there the police were not eager to open an investigation. They stated that not much time had passed since Kristin disappeared and she could easily have gone out with friends. And only on the 4th day from the day of her disappearance the search began. At first, volunteers searched for the girl, but the search did not yield any results. The first thing the police did was turn to Loris Flores, who offered to escort Kristin to the door of the hostel and was supposed to be the last person to see her. He told detectives they walked to her dorm, then said goodbye and she went home alone. After this, he allegedly immediately went to bed. But inconsistencies quickly emerged in this story. Dorm mates saw him take a shower around 5 a.m., while he and Kristin separated after 2 a.m. In addition, the young man had a black eye and scratches on his knees. In response to questions from several people, he told 3 different stories about how he got these injuries. Paul looked extremely suspicious, but there was no direct evidence against him. A month has passed since Kristin disappeared, and the police have expanded the search area from the girl to her hometown. There, journalists inflated the case, citing the similarity of the story to the plot of the popular TV series Twin Peaks. The news even mentioned certain psychics who had already solved the case. According to them, the girl was killed by 2 men on campus, after which they were taken to a cliff and thrown into the water. Of course, these statements gave the police nothing. A year after Kristina's disappearance, her parents filed a lawsuit against Flores, accusing him of involvement in the girl's disappearance. In 1997, Paul testified under oath, but of all the questions he answered only one, when he was asked to give his name. In all other cases, he invoked the Fifth Amendment, which allows a defendant not to incriminate himself. After this, Paul's parents sued Kristin's family, accusing him of causing moral damages. But both of these lawsuits came to nothing. The police had no evidence to bring Paul to justice. On May 25, 2002, the 6th anniversary of Kristin's disappearance, authorities officially declared her dead. During all this time, they also failed to come closer to solving this case. This continued until 2018, when California resident Chris Lambert decided to launch his own podcast series dedicated to various crimes. At the time of Kristina's disappearance, he was 8 years old, and he clearly remembered this terrible story from the news. After 22 years, he decided to conduct his own investigation and was amazed at how neglectful the police had been all along. The podcast first talked to all the witnesses to those events. He learned from university students that Paul Flores had a bad reputation. He repeatedly molested female students, but it never came to official complaints. Next, Chris analyzed the actions of the police and came to the conclusion that they made a number of critical mistakes. Detectives came to the house of Paul Rubanov's father, Larissa, only 2 months after the girl disappeared. Considering that Paul lived with his father, the police should have immediately examined the housing. But when the police did conduct a search, it was carried out extremely carelessly. The detectives did not bring forensic scientists or sniffer dogs trained to smell the smell of decomposition. Because of this, the search was useless. Detectives also did not examine the Flores family's 2 cars, one of which Paul may have used to drive Kristin from campus to her father's house. A few months after this, one of the cars was sold, and the second was allegedly stolen. The police never came to Paul's mother's house, although one of the main clues was hidden there. Chris Lombard discovered that 4 months after Kristin disappeared, a woman named Mary Lesetta rented Paul's mother's house. In one of the rooms she found an earring that was very similar to the necklace Kristin was wearing at the time of her disappearance. The necklace was also featured in photographs of the girl posted on billboards throughout the area. Mary noticed this similarity and took the earring to the police. The police initially refused to include this evidence in the case file and lost the earring altogether. But what Chris found out next shocked everyone. The yard at Paul's mother's house had always been filled with concrete, but shortly after Kristin disappeared, a piece of concrete was cut out of it and a flower bed was created. Mary Lee Sticker, who rented the house, told Chris a terrible fact. Every day she heard a sound reminiscent of an alarm clock on her digital watch at 4:20 in the morning and 4:20 in the afternoon. The sound came from the backyard of the house, right from under the flower bed. One day the sound stopped, and then Mary reported it to the police. When Chris came out with the podcast, more than 6 million people listened to it. This story had been known for more than 20 years, and it was only after the release of the podcast that the police decided to take up the case. They searched 4 locations, including Paul's home. At first it was reported that evidence had been found, but later it became known that they had dug up the yard in Paul's mother's house, but Kristin's body was not found there. However, they believed that they had evidence of the decomposition of a human body under the flower bed. On February 11, 2021, it was reported that Flores was arrested for having an unregistered weapon. On March 15, a judge issued a search warrant for Paul's father's home, and on April 13, father and son were taken into custody in connection with Kristin's disappearance. The court brought murder charges against Paul, and his father was accused of being an accomplice. When Paul and Kristin were left alone, the young man began to pester her, but was rebuffed. That explained the scratches and bruises. Then Paul could kill Kristin and cover it up in his mother's backyard. After some time, they decided to dig up the remains and move them to an unknown location. Father and son have pleaded not guilty and the trial is still ongoing. However, with such a set of facts and evidence, they are unlikely to be able to escape punishment. Let justice drag on for 25 long years. Kristina's parents made a public appeal, thanking Chris Lambert and millions of caring people for jointly being able to get to the bottom of the truth. Now all that remains is to wait for the trial to end and the criminals to receive their punishment.